Hey guys, welcome back. I appreciate you tuning in. Today I just want to go over a question that I got from a subscriber, and it's a rather detailed, well, it's not a detailed question. The answer is pretty detailed and can be in depth. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of information on it, but the question is simple. The question is, when do you start throwing a topwater bait in the spring? What water temperature do you start throwing the topwater at? And really, the simple answer is when the water hits upper 40s, I'm willing to throw a topwater bait. But it's extremely situational when you have water temps that are really in that upper 40s to low 50-degree range. And you know, the two main times that I'll throw throw topwaters when the water is that cold has to do with, one, if I've got dying shad. So, you know, if you've got dying shad, you can catch fish, suspended fish, over 50, 60, 80, 100 feet of water if you've got some dying shad and you want to throw, say, a wake bait or even a topwater bait, you know, like walking bait. But really, at that point, I like throwing more of a wake style bait. Just seems like it generates more bites. And a lot of times I'd say that those are more like spotted bass related fish that I'm catching. The other time that I find that topwaters work really well when the water is still really cold is when you've got like a really warm sunny day, or just a really good sunny day in the spring when, you know, like the water's just been substantially colder. So yes, it's warming up the water, but you might be warming from, say, 45 to 48 degrees. But a lot of times what'll happen are those fish will get into the shallowest areas they can find that just warm quickly. They'll get their bellies down in some dark bottom, some mud. It might be a foot of water, but because that sun is beaming down on them, they're really warming up, and that can make them aggressive. But at the same time, if you're throwing a topwater in a foot, 2 feet of water, you know, even if those fish are on the bottom, they only got to come up a foot and a half to catch your lure. So, you know, it's kind of situational at that point, but the conditions need to be right. You know, a lot of times up here in the North Country, that bite will happen a lot more than people think it does, especially on the rivers we have, because the river fish, those fish like to go shallow, and they are not afraid to get up into, you know, 6 inches, a foot of water, and they'll get back into some of these, you know, backwater sloughs that are super shallow with a bunch of new weed growth that might just be starting to pop up, and you can get onto a very good topwater bite in really cold water. In terms of baits that I like to throw, you know, like I said, if I'm fishing more of that dying shad pattern where I'm maybe in the backs of some creek arms, or, you know, just wherever I may have a good shad population and I know there's some fish that are dying and the bass are suspended a little bit higher up in the water column, I really like to go with a wake bait. The surge shad is a good one by Berkeley. The bomber long A's, the older ones specifically, I really like. Rapala's got a couple of decent ones, but my go-to the last several years has been the surge shad. I like that because it's got a reflective disc on the bottom that gives off a nice flash, and I think that's a unique characteristic of that bait. I'm not too much into, say, throwing a walking bait or a prop bait. It just doesn't seem like it generates as many strikes for me in those conditions. I like to have a slower moving topwater bait, which is why I like that wake style bait. If I'm fishing those fish that are way in the backs of some super shallow water, kind of warming themselves up, it kind of opens up what topwaters to throw. I feel like a buzz bait or a Chapo style bait are fantastic. They're fantastic baits to throw in that case. They're my go-to, the first topwater I would throw. After that, I will slow down with like a popper. Poppers are really good because, again, the fish, just because they're warming up, it doesn't mean that they're super aggressive. So I don't want to be pulling something that's like, you know, just flying by them. The buzzbait's good because it generates a good reaction strike. But like a walking bait, again, isn't necessarily my first choice in that scenario. I'll either stick with that, you know, the buzzbait or the Chapo style. And if it's not that, I'll go with a popper. And the popper, just, you can let that bait sit in their face. And a lot of times the strikes are really unaggressive. They'll come up and they'll just like, it'll be like bobber fishing. You'll just see your topwater just kind of go under. And, you know, those fish will come up and grab the rear treble hook if it's feather dressed. And I mean, it's literally like it just disappears on you. And they're not always nearly as aggressive in their strikes, but if you let a bait sit in front of them for long enough, they're willing to come up and eat it. So those are the two scenarios when the water is super cold. You know, once the water gets up into that mid 50, upper 50 range, it's fair game on everything. I mean, you really can throw a topwater bait in all different scenarios. You know, at that point, a lot of fish are coming shallow to start thinking about spawning. And, you know, it's one of the best times to throw topwater baits is really, you know, once you hit that upper 50s into that 60-degree range, it's fantastic. So it's a tough question to answer because it's really situational, but yes, I will throw a topwater really early and pretty much down into that, you know, upper 40-degree range. So I hope that helps. I hope it gives you some confidence to try it. A lot of times you can catch some really big fish doing it. And, you know, go out, give it a whirl, guys. Let me know what you think. A lot of you guys down in the southern part of the country, you can be doing that right now. The water temps are right in the perfect range. Leave me comments. Let me know. I want to hear what's the coldest you guys have ever caught one in. I'll be really interested to hear that. So if you enjoyed the video, guys, leave a like, leave a comment, like I said, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Tune in tomorrow for another piece of information.